People rolling in there, you're very, very welcome. We've got quite a crowd tonight, so we'll just see how long it takes to get everybody in. As you're coming in, you're very welcome to Positive Nights. This is our event tonight with the Oracle Girl, and we're really, really excited about it. I can feel the energy building over the last few days. So before we start, we will do a short meditation just to kind of connect to our heart center and just really feel ourselves in our bodies. Okay, so I invite you all, before we begin, to close your eyes. Take a couple of breaths into your heart center. Feel your energy moving into your heart center and settling there. And feel yourself moving from the language of thinking to the language of feeling. So really feel into your body and just sit with right where you're at right now. Just allow whatever's there to just be. Just really feel yourself grounding into your body. And as we go through this evening, just really feel yourself staying in that zone of heart so that whatever you hear, whatever resonates, take that away and just let go of the rest. Don't go back into thinking, just stay with the language of feeling. Okay, it's the way it always happens. We're having a slight technical problem here, so just bear with us for a second. Stay in your heart center. I'll be with you in 1 second. Jacqueline?
Yes.
For some reason, the Zoom has not updated for us to allow everybody to come in. So just give us a couple of minutes here at this end till we can sort this out, okay?
No problem.
Yeah. Let's see.
It's lovely to see you all. It seems that we're gearing up for my Real Silence event on the 14th. Real Silence is really active, and when it's at the right frequency, it automatically switches you on, and your self-healing ability will start to strip out the slave self automatically. And the more we can work with that real silence, the better. And it seems we're getting a big dose of that at the beginning of this event, so it's very promising. It also seems that you guys needed to have a little bit of time with me first, huh? One thing about technology is that we can all be together wherever we are. And in the purification space, it doesn't make any difference whether we're on technology or not. It's that connective medium that just allows us to plug back into our own selves and find that frequency which I am constantly emitting. When we all join there, everything else takes care of itself. So there's nothing to worry about. And if you're concerned about what's going on right now in the world, it is worrying, but you don't need to worry. It's going to be okay. Your body knows exactly what to do. And you came here for these times. Well, soon you're going to be needed by a lot of other people around you. And when you come into the purification space, you're prepared for what's to come, so that your whole body upgrades and gets ready for being able to hold a much higher frequency, which will also switch on others. And that's when we'll begin to see the real changes. It's an amazing time to be alive. Not always enjoyable, but we've had a fair measure of that already. So it's time for that to exit now. Just paying attention to your body. There's no need to change anything. You don't need to be silent or go anywhere. Right now, I am generating a stronger and stronger signal. Which a certain part of you is picking up. It's an area within your own source connection. I don't go into you and I don't take anything out. I'm not a healer. I just emit a frequency like a wavelength, and your body picks it up and it activates an area of your source connection which has instructions in it that you brought here for these times. So we're all a bit like sleeper agents. And these instructions are not affected by what's going on in the outside world. They're already in you, just waiting for that time where the speed of your whole personal field starts to pick up and starts to oscillate in a certain way. And as soon as it does, your self-healing ability switches on. And you start to delete out something called the slave self from your being. And the slave self is a setting which keeps you limited and unable to embody your infinity, all of you, that multi-dimensional self which has been locked out of this reality for the large part. And your biology starts to upgrade, and then that bigger part of you can literally mesh with your physicality, and you become this massive antenna that connects through all of the spaces and times currently converging on this reality. And that helps to switch on others just in the same way that I help to switch on people who join the purification space. You start to purify others as well. So this is not about learning or techniques or finding out what to do. You've got that already in you. And when our paths cross, you start to do what you're meant to. And you start to emit this signal that then moves through your family line, first of all, your ancestors, and then it filters out through the interconnectedness which joins all human beings. So you are a purifier. You don't realize it. And everything out there is trained on telling the slave self that it's useless and that it can't do things and that it needs to work hard and study to accomplish something. And that might be true in some walks of life, but when it comes to your own source connection and your ability to purify, all that needs to happen is your frequency needs to rise to a certain level. And once it does, then that innate knowledge takes over and you start to upgrade so that your whole multi-dimensional self walks in. So just a little taster for today. I seem to have a message on my phone about what's going on, so I'm just going to have a look. Well, it looks as though we've kind of crashed the network. And there are so many people trying to get in that it's upset the link. I have a message here. Upgrading the plan as we speak. So let's hope that that sorts out.
Jacqueline, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. I can't see you, but hearing is pretty good.
Can you see me now?
No.
Participants, we've increased it now.
Wait, can you see me now on the picture? Yeah.
No. Let's try here.
Let me see the view here. Speaker view. Yeah.
For some reason I don't have the window.
Okay, well, people are coming in now. What happened was, for some reason, Zoom did not upgrade the plan. There was some technical glitch setting, but now we're getting everybody in. Thank be to God. Well, this was an experience. People are coming in like flying in now. Okay.
Good.
Let's
Okay.
get this show on the road. So I just want to say I don't know what happened there. It was one of those weird things that happens. We did our short meditation. We're going to kick off now. We have 440 people in. We're expecting 1,000, and we'll let that keep rolling. Jacqueline, you're very welcome. Jacqueline, Oracle Girl, we're delighted to have you here. This is Positive Nights. This is for Positive Life magazine. We are interviewing you. We're delighted to do it. This will appear as an article in the magazine. It will appear also as a live video, and it will appear on YouTube. So we'll really get this information out to as many people as we possibly can. This is what we're all about at the moment, as we shift the consciousness. And we're so delighted to have someone like you on the planet doing this work with all of us right now for humanity. So thank you for doing that.
No problem.
And let's begin with our first question.
Okay.
Let's talk about patterns. Patterns that all of us fall into from time to time, things that we find ourselves repeating in our lives, and we're like, why am I getting this lesson? So can you speak about patterns and how they are kind of... Huh?
I can still hear you.
I can still see you now and hear you. Okay. So when we talk about patterns, Jacqueline, what can you say about them in relation to how they get stuck, if you like, in our ancestral line and how we can best shift them?
Okay. So we need to really start at the beginning here, Paul, because otherwise we're going to get trapped in a few sort of old, redundant spiritual paradigms. So you are a new embodied human, and within you, you have a fixture or a setting that is called the slave self. And that vibrates at a certain frequency. And within that setup called the slave self, there is a nexus of what Paul is calling patterns. And all of those patterns mesh together. And if you are vibrating at the level of the new embodied human, you start to purify and delete the slave self and automatically erase your patterns. If, however, you are vibrating at the level of the slave self, then you start to experience life from inside a kind of box, and then you become consumed by trying to resolve or get out of your patterns. And until very recently on the planet, the setting for most human beings and human consciousness has been at the level of the slave self. And what has happened is that in concert with the earth, your own body technology has started to work on a different level. And you've started to unlock the setting of the slave self in you, and you're starting to eject it. So what's going on is that we have two timelines on the planet right now. A timeline where some of humanity are still vibrating at the level of the slave self, and another timeline where humans are already upgrading, and they are upgrading physically and biologically. The issue is not about trying to change your consciousness or remove your patterns. You need to upgrade physically so that your carrier vessel, if you like, for want of a better word, can hold that new high frequency being that is meshing now with this reality. Once you embody your new human self, then the slave self starts to unravel and patterns disappear. And to answer your question, patterns are simply lower or heavier frequency timelines which have been laid down by the versions of your previous self, which we call ancestors, that still leave traces in the wiring of your source connection. You're a bit like a universal plug. Your source connection is a plug or a router that can bring in frequencies from all over the universe. And patterns are also wired into your source connection. So your source connection has a purity aspect, and it also has the patterning that is part of the slave self. And what happens is that when your biology starts to upgrade, then the slave self starts to unravel, the patterns disappear, and your purity aspect takes over, bringing in that higher frequency or multi-dimensional self, which is now able to fully turn up here.
The topic of our evening tonight is the new embodied human.
It is.
And to get a feeling, to get a sense of that, I'm doing your purification process at the moment, and I love doing it. It's beautiful. And today there was talk of our physicality changing, our digestive system changing. And because that's the kind of title of our event tonight, let's really give people a sense of that new human. There was a beautiful part in the process where you spoke about that you're moving from water to land. So
Yes.
Can you talk to us about that new human, what that feels like?
Definitely. Okay. The new human is totally alive. There is still struggle and there is still pain. In fact, you will be able to feel that more. But you will also be able to feel the directness of reality in all of the positive areas of life as well. And because your biology, your actual physicality will be more sensitive and able to receive a wider bandwidth of frequencies, actually your physical body will begin to change, and sometimes you will have symptoms, if you like, of your body starting to manifest, if you like, different abilities, but also sometimes the changing of your cellular and your skeletal structure, which can mean that actually physically you find it sometimes quite difficult to be living with the body. Sleeplessness can be some of the symptoms sometimes, but also a feeling of so much coursing energy that sometimes you don't know what to do with it. And that's because you're beginning to rev up and carry out those instructions that are inside you in your source connection area, which are specifically there for this time. They are powering up. And you are going to be finding yourself thinking, feeling, and doing all sorts of things, I can tell you. And just for those of you who are not in the reboot group on Wednesdays and Saturdays, going through the purification process, the last track that I produced for that group had a metaphor or an image in it that expressed some of the process that I'm talking about. And I described imagine how you have been swimming underwater in these blue sort of murky depths all your life. And all you know actually is living in water. And what's happening suddenly is that all the water is disappearing, and suddenly you find that you are a land being. And you actually always were, because by the time the water is gone, you have no recollection of your previous existence as a water dweller. And as a land being, you suddenly are using lungs and a whole set of other biological equipment that your body starts to switch into in order to live on land. And that's what's happening to us. You could also describe it as two timelines. Previously, let's say on the left, we were all processing on this timeline, which we'll call the slave self. And what's happening is that suddenly a right-hand timeline has come into view, where there's a new embodied human. And that right-hand timeline is getting stronger and stronger. And what's happening is it's starting to collapse the left-hand one, and it's starting to integrate into the right-hand one and move together as one newly upgraded human expression. So previously, it's a bit like we had an experience of ourselves as being a single point inside our bodies. And what's happening is that that point is starting to disappear. It's starting to come out of the body and turn up on the outside of the body with the slave self inside. And then that starts to disappear, and all you have is the new embodied human coming forward. It's an amazing process, and it's an acceleration process, which will feel incredibly exciting at times, frightening as well, because there's so much potential and things that you can actually do and be. And then at the same time, you meet these restrictions on the outside, which is actually the old slave self, that outdated frequency, trying to pull you back in as the new you comes forward. So we're living in a kind of contradiction at the moment, where in your body you may sometimes feel almost as though one part of you is going forward and the other part of you is turning and trying to walk back again as well, because that's the motion of the slave self, that denser frequency inside you pulling in and trying to drain out and go away, and it threatens to take that forward-facing human embodying process back with it, turn it back round and take it down with it. And as you can see, that's quite an accurate description of what's happening in our society at the moment, because we have a force in our society currently that is trying to restrict and control us, to grab us back and bring us down back into that heavier frequency, while we are desperate to move forward, burst out, and claim the future, that very positive future that is ahead of us after this period of struggle, and is already beginning to show itself, that we know is right and that we are in the process of materializing.
When you talk about the slave self, Jacqueline, there was a beautiful, I've spoken to a few different spiritual teachers over the years, and obviously a big part of my own individual learning was recognizing that the mind was not, the conscious mind was not something that I needed to be living from or needed to be really listening to. But I remember once hearing the statement that that part of me, which you call the slave self, and some people call the monkey mind, you know, that kind of crazy part of us, the fearful, the, you know, the holding part, the holding pattern. I heard it described once, and it had power for me, because it just said to me, the person said to me, it's not real. And when I said that to myself in that process of listening to that voice, it enabled me to kind of allow it to drift off into the distance. But when you talk about the slave self, if I say to you it isn't real, is that something you would accept, or do you feel, no, this is very real?
Well, it's a bit of both. You see, once you start to oscillate and actually exist at the new high frequency level, you experience your mind, which is a part of the slave self, as actually being quite unreal, because it starts to slip away and it starts to become quieter. But while you're still vibrating at the level of the slave self, I'm afraid that the mind is incredibly real. And it's a bit like a knot that you can't slip, because you are vibrating at the same level as the installation that you are fixated on and operating actually within. So it depends where your frequency is. And spiritual teachers tend to really invest a lot of time in trying to sort out the mind, and it's pointless. You can't use a robber to catch a thief. You have to upgrade your biology so that then your vibration can actually materialize in reality. And then what is real is much larger and more powerful than the mind and the slave self. And the reality of your ability to self-heal and to purify is already operating, and then the mind will integrate. And actually what happens is it blossoms. It moves from being a controller to an amazing instrument, a receiver of the beauty of this universe, inspiration, and all of that direct receivership from our own source connection.
I'm going to go back now to the purification process again. And it's kind of what you've answered there about the slave self is really the way you described that with the knot. I actually saw that image and I really got it. But the purification process, is there an aspect of us that's always in purity? And if so, can we step into that more easily, or is the process essential at this time? Is the purification process essential, do you feel, at this time?
Well, the purification process is actually what's happening on the planet. You can't step into it. We're all in it. And all that's happening is that we are changing our paradigm and our understanding of ourselves, and we are dropping what's no longer correct for us. So the purification, if you like, steps into us, and then the slave self dismantles, and the new human, the new embodied human, is able to actually just physically appear. So it's not so much really about, trying to step into the process. It's more about watching what leaves. And what will leave is everything that can no longer hold to the new frequency, and that will be aspects of your previous identity that is no longer even able to show up here anymore.
I've done some listening to some of your interviews and different things you've done in the past, and the story of the Oracle Girl and coming from the future is it captures the imagination, it gets people really excited, that superhero thing. Sorry?
It's not a story. It happened.
But it happened, and it's a brilliant, it just really gets you, So when you had this experience in Tibet, and you don't talk about it too much, but I have heard you talk about it from time to time. And it was described that shops would be closed, things about the currency as well. You kind of got a glimpse into what we're now experiencing. When you,
let's give you a little bit of detail.
Sure.
So I knew before I came here that this was going to happen on the planet. I came from the future and I arrived here. I saw my own birth. So I'm talking about a very different type of experience of humanness, perhaps to what is commonplace on this planet. And then when I was in Tibet, and I was there as part of my PhD fieldwork, I came across a woman on the Tibetan plateau who was like a mirror for me, who confirmed to me everything that I already knew and had inside me, and actually was part of switching me on, and is one of the 6 who I operate in a group with. And the words that came out of her mouth were, my words, money will not be worth the paper that it is printed on in your lifetime. To which I immediately thought, well, I think most of us know that anyway. It's all about a fiat currency system. And then she started to describe in more detail about what would happen when that financial system changed. Notice that she didn't say anything about an illness. She didn't say anything about things we put on our faces. It's irrelevant, actually, to what she was talking about. She was talking about a deliberate attempt to change our financial system so that a certain type of reality would start to take over this planet, which, let's just say, was not an ideal one. And she said, one day you will get up and the shops will all be closed, and you won't even be able to take money out of your cash tills, etc., etc. And she was remarking on the fact that there would be a deliberate attempt to shut down one system and to bring in another. And that experience was then the sort of green light for me to start revealing who I was, because from this point I started to speak openly about who I was and what I knew. So it wasn't a discovery for me, or like, I didn't know that and then someone told me and I'm disseminating that information. I already hold the experience of that actually from somewhere else in the future, where I have existed. Exactly what is happening on this planet now has happened in that reality as well. And there was a massive change in that reality, and the forces that were behind that change were not successful. And that is why I am here today, to tell people about what happened, why, and how it relates to this planet and what is going on. And the story of the oracle on the Tibetan plateau is part of that episode in my own life where I started to become more fully revealed. Everything was sort of locked inside me until a certain age, and then it started to switch on and be able to be used and was seen in the outside world. It was always there as a part of me, and I knew exactly what I was here for and what I had inside me, but I couldn't use it. I had to get firmly enmeshed in the ways of this reality, so that I could start to embody the purification space myself, and then start to offer my work more powerfully. What you could say is that I was offering my work from the very first day that I came here, but silently. And slowly my work will go back in that direction again once enough people have heard about the purification space and have started to switch on themselves.
The feeling at the moment when you talk about that we are being pulled back, by this old energy on the planet. Lots of people are asking the question, people are waking up, through this process, and they're asking questions now and they're looking at things. How much should they resist what's going on and give attention to that?
Okay.
And how much should they just move forward into this new space?
So, you're asking a question here about action, which is a very difficult question sometimes in the realm of spirituality, because there's all sorts of rules and teachings. But from the new embodied human perspective, we don't even really need to ask how or what to do, because the slave self, which censors your natural spontaneity, no longer has a grip on you. So you find yourself doing what you need to do, and you don't even think about it, because it's you being you. You're not following instructions or acting out certain pieces of advice. You're not meditating to find out what your deep wisdom is, because you are already that wisdom in human form, naturally emerging. And then the higher faculties, or what I sometimes call the superordinary abilities of the human being, start to come online, and then you start to actually jump timelines with the way that you actually surf the actions that you are already making, and then extend them and take them even further. So I don't tell anybody what to do or what they should or shouldn't do. And in my recordings, actually, when I speak, when words come out, they are actually not instructions, even if they seem so. They are literally the words that need to be heard in that moment to keep everyone vibrating at the next level of high frequency being that will continue this embodiment process that I am talking about. Your body is actually actively doing what it needs to do all the time, and then the part of you that then dreams of something even better steers and pushes yourself out into the world even more strongly to optimize and go beyond even what you are doing in that moment. So it's like you are riding a horse and the horse is already doing it. The horse knows where to go and you are just moving the reins and squeezing the sides of the horse to go faster or slower. But both of you are already in motion. You're not beside the horse thinking, okay, where am I going to go today? Should I go that way or should I go this way? What does the horse think or the trainer in the stable? You're on the horse. You always have been. And it's not about figuring it out.
It sounds almost effortless in some ways, the way you describe it.
It's effortless, but it can sometimes be very, very deep in the feeling aspect because you are in touch with everything and everyone at the same time. And it's dependent on your ability to actually recognize your own self, your own sense of self, which gives you that boundary between that indissolubility that starts to connect you with everything in this universe. You start to pull around an axis where, as you dream and take your embodiment even further and faster than the rate at which you're already going, you start to actually concentrate and focus and pull the beautiful imagining of yourself into form and go further and further. So you are always bringing together no boundary and a very strong boundary. And that's what we call identity, actually. The new human identity is a marriage of heaven and earth, the seen and the unseen. The spiritual is the physical. And it is then a consummation in a type of jumping through timelines and with the action of reverse polarity into a completely different universe.
There's a lot of... Yeah. When I hear you talk, Jacqueline, you say multidimensional selves. And I've always loved that feeling of having access to so many other, we'll say dimensions, but there's a lot of talk about the third, fourth, and fifth, and there's a lot of talk about ascension on the planet right now. How do you feel about describing it like an ascension process? It's not a word you use, no?
No, all these ideas are completely obsolete. You're not sort of diving into dimensions. You are the dimensionality turning up here in physical form. So actually, what's happening is you are jetpacking all of the different dimensions into you, and then you are jumping everything ahead on a new timeline, and you are shedding as rocket fuel all these outdated notions of different frequency settings, if you like, second, third, fourth dimension. They are collapsing and disappearing into one infinite slipstream, where time and space actually become the servant of a completely other way of being, where the dimensions have to bow to us and we start to materialize a whole new reality. That's why there's, and forgive me for using this word, some people don't like it, but it must be used. That's why there's a war on this planet right now. There is a war for control over the materialization coefficients of this planet, because planet Earth is able to seed new realities. And some forces here, they want to stop that, and they want to keep everything within a certain bandwidth, which means then that the human being can continue to be a resource for other activities in other dimensions. Meanwhile, those dimensions are collapsing and they are being brought into a very different order. It's nature's order for a start, but it's also the new human order. It's not the new world order, that political thing, I'm afraid. That's going to buckle and break. And everything that's occurring on this planet is about us already being here as the sleeper agents who are going to rise up and take power and collapse those other dimensions so that everything is brought online here and seeded into a completely new way of being, which is going to ripple through all the universes and bring them into the one slipstream.
Sounds amazing. Put my name down for that, definitely.
Your name was down a long time ago, Paul. We all were down on the list. That's the thing.
Just to say to everybody, there's a lot of people who've joined there in the last while. You're very welcome here to Positive Nights. We had a funny start. We got over it and we're rocking away here, having a great...
Don't worry, it's all been recorded as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all recorded, so you'll get to see it later. But just to say that when I finish my chat here, we will have time for a Q&A. There's a lot of you online here, but we'll do our best to pick some questions that capture the sense of what you all want to hear tonight. So I'll do that in the second half. So I'll continue talking now to Jacqueline for about another 15 minutes, and then we'll come over to you. So do please feel free to type your questions into the chat. And I've kept everybody on mute because that's probably the easiest way of doing this. But you're very welcome to type in what you would like to ask. So Jacqueline, my next question that I'd like to ask you is galactic family, galactic beings. What's your feeling on all this kind of stuff? We get a lot of this. We get a lot of people channeling. We get a lot of information coming through to the planet right now. What of this can we trust? Should we trust? I know, I get the feeling you're going to say to me, all the trust is within me. And I do feel that more so than I've ever felt it. But are we part of the galactic family? Is there any truth in all those kind of things? What do you feel?
Each one of us is the galactic family, and all of us here are joined, both here and throughout all the dimensions which are currently collapsing. Channeling, all this kind of thing, it's all about reaching into other realities and connecting up, sometimes leaving the body, sometimes bringing that back down into the body. All that is leaving, I'm afraid. I'm known for not mincing my words. We have to get over those kinds of ways of being now because they are too low frequency. That doesn't mean that I am saying that all channelers out there are bad or they are wrong or anything like that. It is just stepping stones. And there's some brilliant channelers out there, and they are assisting in actually with the upgrade that is going on in the body in this universe. But just like we graduate from kindergarten and we go to primary school and so on, now we are leaving behind these more parental models, these more hierarchical setups, where we are looking to other things within or without that apparently are better than us or maybe more advanced. It's us. It's all us. We are the advanced beings. And what we're reaching out to through the channeling and in the psychic readings and all that are the aspects of our own multidimensional self that hasn't turned up here. You're not talking to another being out there that's separate and different from you. You're talking to the actual representation of that part of you that hasn't turned up here yet and is dialoguing back to you. You're only ever talking to your own self.
Let's talk about God.
Oh, I like it.
So, God, is it a program?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Are we not made in the image of God? We are God. What do you feel about God? Tell us.
We're made in the image of our makers, and our makers were not gods or God. Our makers were actually beings that visited this planet. And they made us in their likeness, which is why there's a book which says that God made us in his image. It's a reference to those who actually constructed the physical body. It's actually incorrect for me to say they made us. It's impossible to make us because we are the infinity spark of creation. And that's nothing to do with God. Nothing to do with God whatsoever. God is a set of teachings and is a certain frequency projection in our field of consciousness that is given to us by the slave self, which was made by those who made the physical being for us to actually be able to turn up here. It's a long story. I tell it in part of Earth Histories, and I told it in part of the silent immersion this year, and I will also be going very deeply into the matter during the Negative High Frequency Being event on December the 18th.
We look forward to that.
And perhaps we should say, Paul, that before everybody starts crashing your station with complaints that I'm against religion or that we're talking about things that don't support religion, you know, it's not about being for or against. And this is a very important thing to grasp right now on this planet. You can be for and against something that's put in your body. You can be for or against something that you wear on your face. But if you get caught up in this, you're going to get very lost, because there is something that is suggesting that you should confine yourselves to a set of actions or opinions about one side or another of a certain argument. Meanwhile, there's something incredible going on this planet, which all the religions have talked about, and so has spirituality as well. But now, because we need an even greater set of expressions and understandings to bring about what they are talking about, we need to move on from there, and we need to actually embody that reality that they were always talking about. The quicker that happens, all of the talk about this or that, pro or against, and all of the things in the past that have confined us, they will lose their power and disappear. That's what's going on this planet. And it doesn't matter whether you have a religion or not. All that matters is your frequency. If your frequency is actually vibrating at a certain level, then everything that's going on this planet will start to collapse around you, and your new embodied self will start to overturn that denser frequency on which the proceedings at the moment on the planet are happening. And you can have a religion or not. There are some incredibly positive, high-frequency beings on this planet who have no religion, and there are also some incredibly high-frequency positive beings who also have a religion, but they know how to use it and be with it without dividing or destroying or killing people, because of course true religion would never kill people.
When you say about taking sides, and that's really going on the planet right now, people are taking so many sides. There's
Divide and
misinformation.
rule. It's a very ancient story.
It's very well done. It's very well done. It's really.
But who is behind that division? When we take our eyes off of who's telling us to wear something or not, who's telling us, oh, you should go and have that put in your body, when we take our eyes off of each other, then we start to look at who and what is setting up that division. This planet must unite and look out at what is trying to control us. Otherwise, we will look at each other and destroy each other. It's happened before in many other places, and it doesn't need to happen here.
What's your feeling, Jacqueline, on the time frame of this? Do you get a sense of when we are going to start to see this power? I mean, I know it's always here. There's no time on it really. But in terms of Earth time, do you get a feeling for when we're going to really step into this new power that we all have?
It's a great question. So the slave self will always work in terms of prediction, and sees life as being set down, on a timeline which you can then read. Okay, but actually time and space are changing all of the time according to the degree of embodiment of your own purity and that frequency of the new embodied human. So what I say today will only be true for today, and it could go backwards or it could go forwards. So in some ways the information is absolutely useless. But the reason why we seek that information, and I can give it in this time and space, is that it can, in this single point of space and time, suddenly connect you with that interconnected frequency that is nothing to do with that negative future timeline. And that will help you to embody faster this high frequency self that you have, and then it will collapse the negative timeline. Right now, as of today, and this is only true for today, and it will change tomorrow, but as of today, we are looking at least another 14 months of extreme challenge, and it will oscillate between being less and more in that category. And if people wake up as fast as what they're waking up, then we could come to some type of resolution and more freedom again, maybe at the 15th or the 16th month point on the present timeline. If less people wake up, and that's always a possibility, it's not going in that direction at the moment, but if less people wake up and there's a sudden change, then you're looking at a timeline that will be between 5 and 6 years. By the end of probably 2027, early 2028, there will be no more governments, there will be no politicians. This will be a very, very different planet, and we will be out the other side. And the positive future is definitely going to manifest. It is just how hard it's going to be, how quick it will be, and how many people leave as a result of it. Or let's say how many bodies drop, because we don't leave.
Our bodies are going to change, and we're actually going to see physical things take place, and it's like a light body. I've heard that term before, I'm sure you have. It's are we stepping into a new light body, do you feel? Or what way will that unfold?
This is part of the spiritual paradigm. It's not about a light body. We are actually muscling up into a much more physically advanced body, which is lighter but much denser. That sounds like a contradiction in terms, but the speed of the body will actually move much faster, but the experience of having a body, it will feel much, much heavier, but you will be able to move with it quicker. So you will process everything faster and faster and faster, which is of course why we experience time as collapsing.
One thing I love is his healing capabilities, to be able to step into that, whatever's holding me back now in some ways that I feel I need this supplement, I need this permission slip to go for this treatment.
You're just losing the identity that believes that you are not healing, because you are healing every single day now, spontaneously and automatically. Everything that's happening inside and out is all of the stuff that apparently is wrong with you, but actually is just outdated and no longer fit for purpose, leaving. It's happening without you even having to try, because the purity of your source connection is doing it. That's what its instructions are for. So you will find things as you go along that you need to do, but it's all part of that spontaneity within you, that is that native intelligence that already knows how to bring you into that deep alignment with your own perfection.
You talked about some of the symptoms people are having, like sleeplessness and kind of a racing energy in their system.
Sometimes needing great amounts of sleep as well, because there is so much upgrading going on that you need to rest a great deal.
Yeah, so people are talking about this all over the planet right now. So we should just take this as, yeah, this is what we need right now. This
Absolutely.
quickening. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it couldn't go on the way it was, could it? I mean, we really need this. Although it's frightening to think that the population may substantially reduce through whatever means, because perhaps there might be some trouble. It doesn't have to be that way, by the way, but unfortunately it's kind of got left quite late in the game, so it might end up that way. But even though there will be radical repositioning of all of the different coefficients of our reality, we can safely say that every part of us now that's going to come online is so completely necessary for everything that's happening in all those other dimensions that wish also to come into materiality, that there's no stopping it, and it's going to be one of the most incredible journeys we've ever experienced.
Jacqueline, now why don't we go over to the audience and we'll see what questions are coming in. They're coming in like flying in.
Okay.
So I'm just going to randomly go through these and see what we get. Okay. Okay.
Whether your question gets answered or not, by the way, you will receive purification just by signing up for the event today. The answer will come to you through another channel, so the ones
Here's
that
a
get read out
question.
are the ones that are needed.
Here's a question from Peter Van Mussel. Are you suggesting to be as neutral as possible?
No, I'm not suggesting anything. You're going to do it and you're going to make the decisions as you go along. It's not about what others suggest now. You don't have to be something deliberately on purpose to bring about this positive future. It's going to happen anyway. It's whether you align with that current or not, and how quickly your body upgrades to hold the higher frequency version of yourself that's already coming forward. That will be decided by your genetics and the literal physical strength of your body in part as well.
Christine is asking, can you be on, I think she's saying it this way, can you be on such a high frequency that you're not aware of what is going on the planet?
Yes. It's actually sometimes that, though, can be quite self-destructive and even ungrounded. We have to marry the entire bandwidth, the lightest note, if you like, and the heaviest, and the human being is constantly consumed with the effort of bringing those two forces back into the center and materializing them in the middle of that bandwidth. And if we are too far up one end, then obviously we float off and we're not meshed into the context of our reality. And if we become too heavy, then of course that's a different problem on the opposite end of the scale.
Nyla, thank you for that question. Nyla is asking, since you talked about God, how about Christ consciousness?
That is all part of the slave self paradigm. And Christ consciousness, it resonates at a very certain frequency. It's actually quite low now in comparison to the potential of the new embodied human. For some people, it's a discovery, and that's great because that means that just their speed is getting faster. And for others, they are moving beyond that now, and they are starting to embody and take on those frequencies and much more besides.
Thank you for that question. Joanne is asking, is this awakening purification related to the moving into the Aquarian age, where it's been said that all humans must be included in the higher frequency you speak of, i.e. no one left behind?
Loosely, yes. Although, you know, I think we've all been waiting for the Aquarian age for ages. But let's just say, yes, that is roughly the correct question, yeah.
Okay. Yost is asking about the compulsory, we'll call it the compulsory V for now. You know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be specific about the dangers? What do you feel on that one, Jacqueline?
It depends on your frequency, to be honest with you. What I'm about to say, you know, won't really touch the sides for some people. And for others, you know, it will really switch on the part of them that decides for themselves, you know, whether any type of, you know, medical treatment is right for them or not. Some people, medical treatments have a very negative effect and it's not suitable for their body. And other people, they have a medical treatment and it doesn't affect them at all. It really depends on your frequency.
Very good. Thank you for that. Simone is asking, she is asking about healing technologies. Her question is quite broad here, but what do you feel about, you know, vibrations, quantum fields, and some of these devices that have been created that can work with humans? Will that be a part of humanity going forward? Will we work with technology in that way?
Yeah, we will. Because actually, what we will start to do, unlike what we do now, which is where we try to create something better and more scientifically advanced to help heal things, and we almost see ourselves as a little bit, well, maybe as a part of that process, but maybe a little bit less powerful than the actual technology. It's going to be the other way round. We are the healing technology, and then we will create physical devices as well, which harness that, amplify it, and even bring about new possibilities for all beings. And that's what I mean by positive or healthy technology. The type of technology, for example, that can clean oceans, you know, in weeks. The type of technology that can even, you know, speed the mending of the body beyond even the stage that the genetic instructions have got to. When you have the two together at the right frequency, the physical instrument in connection with the new embodied human, then technology becomes a wonder. And it's exactly what is possible for this planet.
Exciting times. GIA asks a question. In one of your recent tracks, The Wish to Destroy, you speak of destruction. What do you consider to be destruction in our day-to-day actions?
Whatever falls away and can no longer stay in form is not a set definition. Because, you know, some people can do something and it doesn't have a negative effect, and others will do that same thing. And because of the frequency at which they operate, it will turn out to be something that maybe brings a great deal of harm. So it's whatever actually starts to fragment and break up and start to go out of form. It's a type of force that goes into dissolution.
Thank you for that question. Mirham is asking, how can we unite with people who believe the narrative of the media?
Good question.
Okay.
You are already united with them. So when I say if you unite, it's the last step on the outside of bringing that unity in, which is already there on the inside. You are all connected on this high frequency level, and you are all together already. And then on the outside, all you need to do is to physically join up with people who are of the same mind. That is what the purification space is for, in part as well. And then you will begin to change the frequency from the inside out in those who are still sleeping. You switch them on, and suddenly they become agents of exactly the same timeline and new high frequencies in the positive sense that you are. That's how you unite everybody.
Question from Andrea. What do you mean by bodies dropping?
Okay. Well, because of the slave self technology, we think that we go somewhere when we die, but actually that's not what happens. Your physical body goes into dissolution, and what you call you and what spirituality calls the spirit, which is only really a small part of what goes on, that sort of disappears, if you like, with the body coefficient, and then something else, which is always there, actually on the outside, with the body and the personality actually appearing within that, becomes, self-revealing. So the body dropping is just the experience of the physical carrier disappearing with the spirit and what some people call the soul, or whatever you want to call it. It's different in different spiritual languages. That all just falls away. But who you are never goes anywhere. You've always been here, I'm afraid.
There's a question here. I think it's it's similar to a previous one, but it's about the V again. If people, this person is saying that she has a deep sadness at her family taking this because they are beautiful beings, they mean well, but what would become of their infinity spark if they take that?
The infinity spark is not affected. It's the slave self that will be destroyed.
Very good. Very good. That brings ease, I think. Leanne is asking, do you think a change in the way we approach death is one of the ways to increase the frequency of the planet?
No. You can't change your beliefs and change the frequency. Beliefs are just part of the slave self. If you want to help to change the frequency of the planet, your actual physical body must upgrade to hold a higher frequency so that you switch on your purifying ability and drop the slave self.
Okay. Question here from Laura. What planetary system did you come from where this happened before? And is asking, are the other 6 beings, the other 5 beings probably, are they from the same planet?
We are all coordinates, if you like, in different time-space realities, and that doesn't really cohere to the idea of any one single place or even planet that you could name. The universe isn't really like that. That's how we conceptualize the universe, so that we can, try to grapple with this dimensional framework, this so-called 3D reality. I came from everywhere, just like all of you. But when you actually start to pack it down into this reality, then because we still deal with the notion of linear as well as other times, but mainly linear time, then it seems like I was somewhere else, and then I came here, and then time got reversed into this present moment. But that's the way we have to talk about it, because that's the only language that we've got.
Lenny is asking, in the new energy, can healings happen spontaneously?
Well, they are. Just look around you. It's not even, a potential possibility. It's real. It's happening. This is the healing. but there's a twisting, if you like, of the mindset to really get on that wavelength, because it seems really awful or really horrific, but this is the healing, what is going on. It's just the higher order of your own self that's in control. Nothing's in control of you.
Here's a question from Nina, who says, is listening to you and hoping that your words help things make sense actually also part of her slave self?
No, the slave self exists within you. You're the one that actually carries the slave self. So the slave self will suggest to you all sorts of things. And especially when it's on that point of dissolution, it gets so incredibly loud that it can try to take you back over, and it will destroy you, in fact, if you find it difficult to actually step back and see what is happening in its own reality. The slave self will tell you all sorts of things about how terrible you are or how terrible someone else is. And that's its last hope, that you will identify with that instead of the infinity being that you are.
Someone is asking here, Jacqueline, about the 21st of December, which is being put forward as a significant date astrologically. Have you anything to say on that date?
Well, it is all significant. Every date in December, actually, particularly from the 8th onwards. And it's more the 22nd that's really, really significant. But just see it as a continual corridor of a crescendo of power that is pulling backwards and forwards and sideways through time and space to get more of all of you here as quickly as possible. Because as soon as that happens, that's when the tables start turning.
Question, who is it that is behind this division that we have on the planet? Who are the negative frequency beings? Names and addresses, please.
Well, I will answer that question simply for now, and then we can go into more detail on the 18th. It's also good for you guys to download shadow controllers and purify our leaders in the library on my website if you want to go deeper into this question. But just to answer simply, the negative high frequency beings, they're not just out there, they're in here as well. And they are part of another life stream in this reality, which does not function biologically the same way as we do.
Okay. Someone saying the reptilians. We'll leave that hanging out in the air for the moment. Okay.
Not the reptilians, but we'll talk all about them on the 18th.
Okay. Okay.
And all the other guys. So many of them these days.
So in the new human body, someone is asking, will we age like we do presently, or will it be different?
No, we will definitely go into reverse aging. In fact, we are, all of us, going into reverse aging, because the mechanism of reverse polarity is what this leaping through time is about as we embody this new human reality. So we will start to age much more slowly. And also, you know, people who are on that other timeline, perhaps you might notice that others start to age more. The gap in time is starting to get bigger and bigger, because just like views and opinions are polarizing in the society, so are the timelines, and you start to see the extremes. What falls away will actually start to go quicker, and what comes into form will then slow down, densify, and then strangely it will seem as though a youthfulness and a wider set of possibilities comes online, similar to how you felt when you were a child.
I like the sound of that.
It's good.
Yeah. Roxy is asking how, and this is probably a question for a lot of parents out there, teenagers and their electronics, their phones, their social media, it's disconnecting them from nature and their true self. How do we get them off that stuff? And is 5G and EMF something we need to move away from?
Actually, you know, it's disconnecting them from the slave self, believe it or not. It does have an effect, though, on the physical body. So it's two things. There's a positive and there is a so-called negative. Because at the moment, the type of technology we have, because it's a reverse engineered type of technology from a certain type of intelligence, which is linked with apparently quite destructive frequencies and wavelengths, it harms our physical body. But at the same time, the absorption of young minds into these worlds and the whole physical instrument of this technology is actually freeing themselves from a denser frequency. And what will happen is that some of those young people will get taken over by the technology and their bodies will progressively weaken. And perhaps they will manifest many physical illnesses which then end the old human body, the possibility of that timeline on the earth. And then there will be others who will then find within them, if you like, a doorway or an access point to harness the positive side of technology, and they will refuse to go along with the negative effects that we have currently of that technology, and they will upgrade it. They will change it and get rid of the negative side of technology, demand that it is made healthy, and they will design healthy versions of what we already have that does that and far more. And that will revolutionize the planet. So even those young people who may succumb to diseases or be taken over by the technology in some way, it's still actually in some ways, you might say, positive. Because they will collapse the timeline from progressing further by taking it out of existence through the dropping of perhaps, you know, an aspect of themselves or even their whole body apparatus.
Very good. Thank you for that question. And now I have a question from Lenny. Is the new human changing DNA from carbon to crystalline?
It is certainly changing the DNA. We don't need to change our DNA ourselves. As we purify, our biology upgrades, and then the frequencies that flood into our being actually then mutate our DNA. It's more that way round, but a lot of people haven't realized that. Carbon to crystalline, yeah, it's not really very accurate, but it's a really nice way of putting the change that is going on. We're not becoming crystalline beings, where actually we are becoming a more unlimited expression of all of the different types of material reality, crystalline being another of them that's possible.
Very good. Thank you for that question. Andrea is asking, is there something true about old and new souls? And if there isn't, why are some people just seem to be way more advanced than others?
Well, you know, souls and all of that, it's just an idea, really, based around a way of being that human beings actually had about 1500 years ago. Human beings don't have souls anymore, I'm afraid, but the teachings have just survived. I'm sorry if some people find that quite upsetting, but it's part of my job, really. Sometimes you will get very angry by what I say. Some of you will just hate me, and it's okay. It's part of the purification. It brings up that aspect that's not you, that's trapped in there, or even in your family line, or maybe exists in another part of your time-space reality, and it obliterates. So don't worry about it. It's cool, and I don't take it personally. You know, the soul is a concept or an idea left over from another time when actually you could say it was accurate, and that's what the reality of the human being was, but it isn't anymore. And so, you know, the new set of realities that we're taking on now, you can point to a sort of aspect of yourself where a part of that might be true, but it isn't really any longer. you have to step out of the teachings now. You can't continue to just repeat this stuff. It all exists at a certain bandwidth, and you will get stuck in the place and the time as well, historically, where these teachings were introduced, and you will just continue to resonate at the same frequency level as the person who introduced them. Some of those guys weren't very nice, you know. Not all of them were nice guys. Just
Okay.
to say that.
Okay. Thank you for that question. Vicky Vanderberg is asking, will we develop sentient abilities like telepathy and sensing? How will these abilities be put to use? Will these abilities actually help us to unite? And how can we help develop these abilities? Very good question. Yeah.
We don't have to develop them. We've already got them, and they are becoming revealed through this frequency shift. And then we are in our own selves becoming more and more physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually conscious. And it's like we are then re-imprinting our consciousness with this new information that comes from already functioning with those abilities. And we will take all of that much further. We are the human internet. It's why you've got this other half-cocked idea out there that all human beings should be wired into the internet and fused biologically with machines. It's just a lower frequency interpretation of the way that the new embodied human already operates at a far more advanced level.
Thank you for that question. Here's a question from Andreas asking, did Jesus exist? What was and is his role?
Well, you're going to find this answer rather mystifying. And by the way, you know, the words just come out of my mouth. I don't have any beliefs or views. I'm an oracle. They just manifest according to exactly who's in front of me. So I'm just like a mirror, really. So the answer is yes and no. If you were to wheel back time and space to a certain point, you would find someone or something called Jesus, but it wouldn't bear any relation to what you call Jesus now in this reality. There's no connection between the two. And it's a bit of a waste of time to sort of go into those kind of things. We've got to live ourselves. We've got to bring our own selves online. And to even ask if someone actually did exist is kind of the wrong question, because you're asking it within the world of another person, you know, in another time that isn't even here anymore. So it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it.
It's such a great answer to that question. I love it. I've never heard it answered like that before. I love it. L. Dries is asking, can you tell something about the principles of nature?
Oh, sure. You'll hear all the principles of nature in my purification tracks. It's a live, dynamic language that is continually issuing through your biology because you work according to the natural order and nature's principles. We already know some of them, you know, even from being taught at school, what goes up must come down, that kind of thing. But actually, it's a very subtle sense of tuning in your physical body and in your emotional and mental and spiritual body that is continually informing you and communicating and giving you information about not that way, this feels heavier or lighter. And it is the technology by which nature gives you that signaling in your body and then helps you to find that place where momentum is effortless. And then you can jump even further with it because your dreaming apparatus, a human being is a dreamer, and I have talked about this a great deal in other events. You can find them in the library on the website. The human being is then able to take that and to seed new realities.
Very good. ZOMC is asking, will our bodies still dance? Will they create? Will they paint? Will they eat delicious food? How will the arts develop? Do we become new myths? Okay.
Yes, lovely question. Because
Wow.
of course we are the heroes of our own drama. I often say I am my own masterpiece, so are each and all of you. And, you know, we are engaged in an epic adventure of redefining ourselves in a time-space reality that is falling away. So we are a myth and a reality at the same time. We are our own legend, but we are fact made true, all in the same breath. And we're writing the greatest story on earth right now. That's why I call some of my events Future Rewrite when we go through upgrades, because we are the ones who are setting down the new timelines, and we will go further than that. We will actually rewrite nature's principles as well in the end. That is what you would call at the moment the next generation, but the next generation will be us soon, so it's not that far away. 2030s.
Back to the 30s. Janine Homan is asking, what do you call the state when your ego transcends? If you don't call it Christ consciousness, what do you call it?
You're trapped in spiritual ideas there. Just put all that to the side, because if you try to answer questions like that, you've got to keep your vibration and your whole ability to materialize in a very limited zone. What's better is to refocus now back on your own body and the signals that you're receiving live through your actual conscious equipment every moment. Find the place where momentum becomes spontaneous in you, and that becomes an outcome in the purification space as well, and then use that to push forward and create what it is that you want to see happen on this planet out of the context that you must obey and that you've got to slip into, like a piece of clothing.
Very good question. And Herman is asking, what will happen with the people who cannot keep up with the higher frequencies?
They will leave. Or let's just say their presence will cease to imprint itself on you. They're still here, but you are on a different timeline. So they collapse into a different reality. And for some that will mean dropping the body, and for others it won't. They'll just be in other places, but still within the bandwidth of what we call reality.
Karis is asking, do we need to release all the blocked up springs and wells?
Well, they will release anyway, and if you help with that, that's a great service if that's your path to do that. You know, we're unblocking those wells and springs in ourselves, of course, as well. And anything that you can do to align yourself, first of all, with nature, because people seem to forget about that. They get very involved in all this external sort of, you know, we'll do this to help nature, which is great, by the way. But you have to be aligned yourself first. You've got to be at the right frequency alongside that. And of course, the two often go together. They're not one before the other. But we can get lost sometimes too much in external over us actually growing our biology so that those divisions disappear. That's part of purification, which is a whole different deal.
ATC is asking, should we be worried about the seeming destruction of our natural world?
Well, anything that gets destroyed in this planet is something that we should not take lightly. Dissolution is certainly a fact of life, but destruction in the sense of natural habitats being needlessly destroyed and beings of any shape, size or form being poisoned or brought to an end prematurely is not okay.
Question from Laura. I think she's practicing or she's worked with hypnosis, and she's wondering, the information when you are in a state of hypnosis, is it coming from slave or is it coming from higher self?
It depends on the practitioner. And it depends also to an extent actually on the person who's going to the practitioner as well, because as other layers of reality open up, then depending on what frequency that you are actually operating, that will condition what starts to open up. So, you know, for some people, it might be, you know, the next layer on from this reality, which is not death space anymore. It's the space of alien frequencies. And I don't mean extraterrestrials by that. I mean something else. But I'm not going to go into that today. You know, others will open into the potential of their own source connection and will then embody more of their own multidimensional self. It really depends on the circumstance. Nothing's good or bad in and of itself.
Natty Alexander is asking, can you clarify the difference between being united with those on the negative timeline, if you are on a positive timeline, and needing to let go of relationships that don't feel aligned anymore? She's feeling that this seems to contradict. There was an earlier question, I think, yeah.
Let's just keep it really practical. You know, you can't actually hold on to what's meant to leave. However hard you try, it will go. So see what leaves. It's not so much about letting go. That can be an aspect of that process sometimes. But because we're in a time now where certain things at a certain bandwidth are being forced out of the picture because everything is moving into a different setting, then it's going to be taken anyway and it's going to leave. That might be a person or a place or a thing. The thing you have to make sure that you do is to always push ahead in the direction that's right for you, because that will then hasten the leaving of what needs to leave, and it will actually bring about more of the unification and the solidification of what's meant to stay. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Karen is asking, since she's been in the purification space, she's been feeling quite woozy. It feels like she's floating, not inside her body. Could this mean that she's just purifying? Is there anything she can do to help herself practically?
Now, in this case, this person, actually, there is a lot of dead energy in the personal signature there. That doesn't mean that you're dead or that there's anything wrong with you, by the way. It means that the purification is actually bringing out and is actually transforming a lot of trapped energies. There's been a lot of medicines and pharmaceuticals taken by ancestors and people in the family line, and you're experiencing that kind of zombie kind of feeling that they experience themselves. It will pass. So just follow the aftercare on my website, which is incredibly important when you're in the purification space. Keep reading it, making sure that you're following all of it, and it will sort itself out. It's nothing to worry about.
Someone is asking, will you do another purification on Australia this year?
I'm always purifying, and I hold many events. There will be more purifying events. For a little while, there will not be another one on Australia. We have other places to go, which are starting to come into the picture as being important. Because there are themes linked to the Purify events, in actual fact, in some ways, it doesn't matter which country we go to, because the theme affects all countries. And we just move to focusing on the country that's in the frame at that particular time when we do the event that holds the whole picture together.
Very good. JY is asking, what is your vision for the future of Earth?
Well, it's not even so much a vision. I see it. It really is a reality that's already coming forward, that human beings are moving into more community, both digitally and on the ground, that they are starting to align more with nature's principles, and they are also thinking for themselves more. Now, you might think, all right, I don't see much evidence of that. Okay, well, you don't see much evidence of that in the bandwidths which are leaving. But in the higher frequency bandwidths which are staying and are materializing, you are now freer than you ever have been. And as the push of your physical being starts to move that reality into the material, you're going to experience such a strong surge of power and refusal to go along with anything that doesn't uphold the human good. You'll be quite surprised who you're going to become. It's all in there already. It's unstoppable.
An unstoppable force.
And the more you are restricted and confined, the more it will come forward.
Maria is asking, does the new evolved body live longer than the current physical form?
Yes. Yes, it does. Unless there are, let's say, unless there are some difficulties in the upgrade of the physical vessel at certain junctures in time. Sometimes there can be mismatches in the frequencies because there's so much going on the planet so quickly, and the body can splinter as well. And sometimes that means that somebody, their lifeline actually shortens as a result.
We're coming to our last few questions from people.
Okay.
They've been really good questions.
Great
Thank you,
questions.
folks. Really good questions. And they're flying along here. Brilliant. Wim is asking, how do we meet the challenges of the current times and actually live our multidimensional signature?
Realize that you are actually living your multidimensional signature, and it's the slave self that asked that question.
Okay. Is being in the purification space enough to upgrade our bodies to hold higher frequency, or is there something else that we need to be doing to upgrade?
You're welcome to try anything you like. This is what the purification space is for. You don't have to use it. The purification space is actually within you, and it's turning up on the outside of you at the moment so that you encounter the full force of your own reality. You've always been in the purification space. You'll never leave it. And you're just catching up with the part of yourself that doesn't quite understand that yet. And is grappling with all of the practicalities on how you live that.
Andrea is asking you to talk about the climate change BS and the actual condition of the planet.
I'm not really sure that I haven't answered that question already, really. I think that you are going to see a tipping point where suddenly everybody is talking more about what isn't true rather than what is. And I think that's already there, actually, in vast swathes of the population, but they're not saying so much about it. But there will be several flashpoints over the next 2 years, 18 months, where people just suddenly can't help but show that they know that they don't accept, that they're choosing a different way.
Ali is asking, Jacqueline, when you talk about, I think you said a crooked thing becoming straight, what are you talking about? Is it DNA?
Partly, yes, but I'm also talking about the way that fact has been made fiction and fiction has been made fact. Everything is back to front now. Black is white. And, even when you look within, economic or political arenas, the far right is the far left and the far left is the far. You can't even tell the difference anymore. And that's what happens when a whole reality starts to collapse. All the meanings float out of their forms or their containers, and you see that actually that everything is just an expression of a frequency, which once it drains out of the whole picture can then form again in a completely new and different way that is more aligned again.
Jen is asking, is it worthwhile for us to try and educate others on the repercussions of the injection? Is it worth signing petitions? Is it worth fighting against the system regarding this? Where to put their energy?
It depends who you are, and this is a bit of another what to do question, really. Education has never got us anywhere. And information doesn't really achieve all that much in the broader context of which I'm speaking tonight. We've known from day one that this is a load of bullshit. To be honest with you, nothing's changed. You don't need more information about the same old bullshit. It's not about information. It's more about the ability that you have to actually live the timeline that puts that information back into the whole frequency of no harm.
Some people asking, that it's kind of coming up a bit here from a couple of people, if the V can't destroy our infinity spark but will destroy our slave self, then why don't we just take the V? So
because it
people
will destroy your body potentially.
Exactly.
If the setting of your slave self is so different from the new embodied human aspect of you that is trying to come forward, two worlds in one body will splinter and fracture. So it's different for each person. So it's not about, what's the point. It's about where the setting is correct for you. And each person has got to decide that for themselves. And then you'll find out.
Tobias is asking, the energy that's coming in here, December, these significant dates, who is generating that energy? Where is it coming from?
We are. It's not coming from anywhere except our own selves.
Okay.
We are the ones behind these changes right now. We're actually the shadow controllers in a way. But we're positive high frequency beings rather than negative high frequency beings.
How do you know for sure you're on the right timeline, Nicole?
You don't. It's not about knowledge or knowing. You are tasked with being who you are, and if you find out, you will find out. It's not about a certain sort of conviction even. It's more about discovering that sense of self within every moment as you embody your new human frequency, and then using that in the way that you wish to make your reality more and more grooved with exactly what it is that you're thinking and feeling from the inside out. The rest, maybe you never find out, but you will still continue through this reality having a certain quality of existence, and you make the meaning. That's what you're here for. That's the true definition of what the old God is. It's the making of meaning. We do that, nobody else.
When we drop the slave self, Hank is asking, how will our sexuality develop with the dropping of the slave self?
Oh, it will be really different for each person. Some people, might think of themselves as being, more spiritual. For others, it would be less so. But there will be more aliveness in the body, passion, desire, and excitement. And depending on where your frequency is, that may be affecting your sexual appetite and your drives as well, or it may move into other areas. In general, it's probably true to say that as we continue on the planet, that we won't need to use the human reproductive aspect of sexuality quite so much anymore. And for some people, they won't be able to anyway, because the body will move into a different range.
This is our final question, Jacqueline, before we go into our closing part of the evening. Someone is asking your take, and I suppose a lot of people would probably ask this, on the sacred plant medicines like ayahuasca.
I have a very good interview on my website in the interviews and podcasts section done by Jennifer Steele a couple of years ago, which is still entirely current. She's an excellent interviewer, where I say a lot about this. It's us. Nature is being fetishized into the new God. And actually, nature is not even remotely interested in some of these rituals and the things that we're doing. Before people get excited, I'm not saying it's bad or it's wrong, but it's a crutch if you become attached to it and if you need it in order to have certain experiences. True shamanic processes are there to help you embody who you are so that you can be and do that with or without the plant medicine. So it's an amazing process you can go through from a healthy point of view to embody your own self. Or it can just be another ride into addiction and dependency in a much more politically correct way.
Thank you, Oracle Girl, for all your wisdom this evening. Someone has made a comment here saying, mind blown. So yes, mission accomplished. Your mind has been blown.
Remember that you've all received a very strong purification tonight. It's not just words. Please check out the aftercare on my website. If you feel to go further, join the Reboot group on a Wednesday or Saturday. There's lots of events coming up. And I hope to see you again. It's a great journey we're all on. Good luck with it.
It's been brilliant. And the website, again, just remind everybody, I mean, everybody knows, but it's oraclegirl.com. Is it, Jacqueline?
.org, O-R-G.
Org. People still coming in, would you believe? For our closing, I'd like to invite you, if you're okay to do it. It's just like a 5-minute, maybe we say 5 to 10 minute meditation that you bring us on.
Yes.
And then we'll close out then. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So you're already in the purification, but we're just going to intensify it now and send it up a notch. Okay. And unlike meditation, you don't really have to be or do anything particularly. We're not aiming to achieve anything. It's going to happen anyway, whether you like it or not. So just relaxing. I think most of you can feel it. There's no getting away from it. You're actually speeding up right now. I'm not making you do it. I'm not putting anything into you or taking anything out of you. I don't need to. I wouldn't dare, actually. I wouldn't know how to. I'm just transmitting a signal. And you're like a tuning fork, and you either pick it up or you don't. And if your source connection doesn't want it, nothing will happen. And my own body is speeding up. It's going through very strong revolutions right now. And I can see that the vast majority of you are responding extremely deeply and extremely quickly. We don't need any techniques. This is not about methods. Your body already knows what to do. Very good. And when I say I see what's happening, it's just the words coming out of my mouth. I haven't got some sort of psychic vision or anything like that. I don't really have any abilities. I know that sounds weird, but I don't. Very good. So receiving this purification from your own self-healing ability, from your own source connection now. Tonight, this group is particularly helping not only to purify within your own self and your own family, but within the timelines of the positive future for all beings, that necessity of moving beyond fear into just saying and being who you are, regardless of the consequence. That uncensoredness is embodying more strongly with all of you. I'm just reporting back to you what you're doing. I'm not doing it, you are. Very good. And sometimes the breath gets forced out of me as another wave of purification moves through the space, and it moves my body as well. I'm not blowing out. Very good. And I'm just the part of you that purifies, turning up in front of you. I'm your future self. Just come back through time to meet you. Beautiful. Some of you might feel a bit hungry afterwards. Your metabolism will speed up a bit. And you may find that others around you sense a difference in you, but they can't tell what it is. So sometimes they sort of want to be around you, or they even sort of provoke you a bit to try and get your attention, so you feed them. So just being aware that you have had this experience tonight, and making sure that what you do and say is what you want to do and say. Staying in healthy control. It's been great. Thank you, Paul. It's been an amazing experience tonight, and I'm sure you'll have a few things for wrapping up, but thank you very much, all of you. It's been really lovely to be here tonight.
I want to thank Oracle Girl for being here, and I want to thank my friend Ruth, who's sitting here beside me, for turning us on to Oracle Girl's work.
Big shout for Ruth.
Big shout for Ruth. Give us a wave. There's a hand. I'm surrounded by hands. And I want to thank all you beautiful people for joining in here this evening and for your wonderful questions. I think we covered a lot, and yeah, it just seems like we really contributed to something here this evening. And I want to say to all of you, and indeed to Oracle Girl, thank you, Oracle Girl, for coming back from the future. You had to get a couple of buses, a couple of trains, a couple of TARDISes, I'm sure, to be here with us. My Irish humor is coming through. I can't help it.
Definitely. I made it.
But I just want to say that we see you and we're here with you.
Yes.
And we thank you for what you're doing.
And the same here. We are all together in this, and something extraordinary is happening.
And from my heart to all of your hearts out there, I send that resonance and that vibration of oneness, of purity, and thanks and gratitude. Thank you so much, Oracle Girl.
Positive Life Ireland. What a gig.
Positive Life Ireland. This has been a gig. Excellent. So we'll be here again soon doing another event. Check us out on positivelife.ie. Check out Oracle Girl and oraclegirl.org. And sending you all love. Jacqueline, see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.